The rain was steady now, falling in thin, misty sheets as Adam stared at his phone, still parked outside the office. The message from Mike sat on his screen, glowing like a fire in the dark, something that couldn't be ignored no matter how much he wanted to. Amanda, his Amanda, sitting at a restaurant table with another man. His friend's words had been casual, but there was no mistaking the weight behind them: candlelight, flirting, laughing. Adam's mind churned as he started the car, gripping the wheel harder than he needed to. His breaths were shallow, uneven, and it felt like the world had suddenly become too loud. He could hear his heartbeat in his ears, a deep, rhythmic drum pounding faster and faster. He thought of Amanda's goodbye that morning, the soft kiss she pressed against his cheek before grabbing her yoga mat. She'd smiled at him the same way she always did, a practiced smile, maybe, before leaving for what she claimed was her class. The thought of her now, laughing with someone else, sharing a quiet meal under candlelight, made his knuckles go white. How many times had she done this? How many lies had he swallowed whole because he trusted her, because he believed in their life together? The word yoga echoed in his head like a cruel joke. He didn't remember most of the drive. The rain smeared his headlights into streaks, the wipers sliding uselessly across the glass. All he could see was Amanda. Amanda on their wedding day, Amanda making him pancakes on his birthday, Amanda humming softly while folding laundry. And Amanda, now, leaning forward across a table lit by the warm glow of flickering candles. He pulled into the lot of the restaurant, a small, elegant Italian place they'd gone to once, years ago, for an anniversary dinner. It had been special back then, he remembered how she'd called it, their little hideaway. Now it felt tainted, as though the whole place had conspired against him. He spotted Mike just outside the side entrance, a cigarette dangling from his lips. "You didn't have to come," Mike said softly, brushing water off his jacket. His face was shadowed under the dim street lamp. "Where is she?" Adam's voice came out sharper than intended. Mike glanced over his shoulder, as if making sure no one else was around. "Back left corner, far side of the room. You'll see her. Blonde hair, blue dress. He's in a green jacket." Adam didn't wait to hear anything else. He pushed past Mike and headed for the door, his chest tight, his heart slamming against his ribs. He hadn't rehearsed what he'd say when he saw her, hadn't thought about what he'd do. The need to see, to know for himself, overpowered everything else. The restaurant was warm and low-lit, humming with the quiet chatter of couples and friends. The hostess barely glanced up as he walked in, his rain-soaked coat dripping onto the marble floor. His eyes swept the room quickly, scanning for her, and then he saw her, saw them. Amanda sat in the corner, her back straight, her blonde hair cascading over her shoulders, her face lit by that easy, familiar smile. Across from her was a man, early 40s, clean-shaven, confident in the way men are when they don't have to try. He leaned closer to her as he said something, and Amanda laughed, her real laugh, the one that used to be his. Adam felt his body go rigid. The room around him blurred into nothing. The gentle clink of silverware and the hum of conversation faded beneath a rushing sound in his ears, something like static, something like a storm. Amanda's smile faltered as she looked up and saw him. For a moment, her face went blank with confusion, then something else, fear, maybe, or guilt. She dropped the fork she'd been holding, the soft clatter of it hitting the plate cutting through the silence between them. "Adam?" Her voice came out thin, uncertain. The man sitting across from her turned, frowning slightly as if trying to place him. "Who's this?" he asked, calm, casual, oblivious to the storm he'd just stepped into. Adam didn't answer. He barely looked at the man, his gaze fixed on Amanda as his anger boiled over. His movements felt disconnected, almost dreamlike as he stepped forward and grabbed the edge of the table. Before either of them could react, he flipped it. The table tipped violently, plates crashing to the floor, wine splattering across the man's shirt, dripping down the sides of Amanda's dress. She jumped up, a shriek escaping her lips, her face pale and shocked. The man stumbled backward, cursing as the glass shattered around his shoes. "Are you serious, Amanda?" Adam's voice was loud enough to turn heads. Diners at nearby tables froze, their forks mid-air, their conversations cut off mid-sentence. Amanda took a step back, trembling. "Adam, please. You're on a date." Adam's voice cracked with disbelief. He couldn't keep the words from pouring out. All those nights at yoga? You were here. Were you always here with him? Her eyes darted around the room, the weight of onlookers pressing down on her like a spotlight. Adam, don't. He held up a hand, his voice cutting through hers. Don't you dare explain this. I don't want to hear it. The man, Amanda's date, finally spoke up, stepping between them slightly. Look, man, calm down. Let's talk about this like adults. Adam turned on him, his eyes blazing with a fury he didn't even know he possessed. Don't talk to me. Amanda's date stepped back, his hands up in surrender. All right. I'm just saying. I said don't. Amanda reached out toward him. Adam, listen to me, please. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think, Adam shot back. He turned sharply, his pulse pounding as he stormed through the restaurant, past the stunned hostess and the wide-eyed diners. Amanda's voice followed him, her pleas blending into the din of gasps, whispers, and broken glass. Outside, the rain hadn't stopped. It hit him like a wave as he stumbled back to his car, his breath ragged. He braced himself against the door, staring down at his trembling hands. The image of Amanda's smile, the way she'd leaned so close to the other man, replayed in his mind like a broken reel. When he finally climbed into the driver's seat, his movements were mechanical. He yanked his phone from his coat pocket, and his hands shook as he scrolled to the message Mike had sent earlier, the picture. Amanda mid-laugh, her fingers brushing against the man's. Adam stared at it for what felt like hours. His heart pounded louder and louder as he opened his contact list, selecting Amanda's friends, her family, everyone who knew her. He typed quickly, his breath coming in sharp, shallow bursts. To those who thought Amanda Blake was a loving, devoted wife, here's what she was doing tonight. Share as you see fit. With one tap, the message sent. Adam dropped the phone onto the passenger seat and leaned back against the headrest, his eyes slipping closed. The rain drummed against the roof of the car, drowning out everything else. He didn't cry, didn't scream. He just sat there, hollowed out, as the world around him dissolved into darkness. Adam didn't remember driving home. His memory was a fog of headlights, windshield wipers, and the steady pounding of rain that matched the thrum in his chest. By the time he pulled into the driveway, his house, their house, felt unfamiliar, like a relic of someone else's life. He sat in the car for a moment, gripping the wheel, his knuckles aching from the force of it. Through the rain-blurred windshield, the home he'd spent years building with Amanda stood still and quiet, every window dark. He walked inside, his soaked shoes squeaking against the hardwood floors. The silence in the house felt louder than it ever had, pressing against him, smothering him. The family photos lining the walls stared back at him, mocking, Amanda's smiling face beside his on their wedding day, her arms wrapped around him on a trip to the Grand Canyon, their anniversary photo from just 2 years ago. He couldn't stand the sight of it. Adam's hand trembled as he yanked a picture from the wall, the frame splintering as it hit the floor. The sound was sharp and satisfying. His breathing came in ragged bursts as he stood there, surrounded by the shattered remnants of what he thought was his life. The silence was broken by the faint buzz of his phone. He glanced at it where it lay on the counter, Amanda's name glowing on the screen. Decline. It buzzed again. This time, a message popped up. Adam, please pick up. Let me explain. I need to talk to you. A scoff escaped his lips, bitter and humorless. Let me explain. What could she possibly say that would matter? He'd seen it, her. With him. Laughing, smiling, alive in a way he hadn't seen in years. The thought made his stomach turn. Another buzz. Adam, I'm coming home. Please don't do anything stupid. His jaw clenched, and his hand curled into a fist. Stupid? She thought he was the one losing control. He turned the phone off and shoved it into a drawer, slamming it shut. For now, he didn't want to hear her voice, didn't want to see her name. The storm outside continued, a low growl of thunder rolling in the distance. Adam moved through the house like a shadow, stopping when he reached their bedroom. He stood in the doorway, staring at the bed. Her side of the bed, the pillow still holding the faint indent of where her head had rested the night before, made his chest tighten. He thought of all the times she'd slept beside him, just inches away, while her mind, and her heart, had been somewhere else. With someone else. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway jolted him from his thoughts. Headlights flashed briefly through the curtains. She was home. Adam felt a wave of nausea as he moved toward the front door, every step heavy. His heart pounded as he braced himself, trying to contain the anger that burned through him. The key turned in the lock, and the door opened slowly. Amanda stepped inside, her face pale and drawn. Her hair, damp from the rain, clung to her cheeks. She looked like she'd been crying, her mascara smudged slightly under her eyes. Adam, her voice was soft, trembling. She set her purse down on the entryway table, her hands shaking. Please, let's talk. Adam didn't move. He stood there, his arms crossed tightly over his chest, his eyes cold and unflinching. Talk. The word came out flat, edged with steel. You think there's anything left to say? She flinched, her breath hitching. You don't understand. I don't understand. The words exploded out of him before he could stop them. I saw you, Amanda. With him. Laughing. Like it's all some joke. Like our life, our marriage, meant nothing to you. It's not like that. Her voice cracked as she stepped closer, her hands reaching out toward him. Adam, please just let me explain. Explain what? How long has it been going on? Adam demanded, his voice rising. All those nights at yoga? Was that him? Were you always with him? Amanda's lip quivered, and for a moment, she didn't answer. How long, Amanda? He barked. 6 months. Her voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through him like a knife. Adam's chest tightened as the truth sank in. 6 months. Half a year. He shook his head slowly, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. Wow. And here I was thinking you were out bettering yourself, taking time for you. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she stepped closer. It wasn't supposed to happen, Adam. I swear. I didn't plan for any of this. You didn't plan for it. He let out another sharp, bitter laugh. And yet here we are. Things have been bad between us, Amanda said, her voice trembling. You know that. You've been so distant. You're always working, always distracted. Don't you dare put this on me. His voice dropped, low and venomous. Don't you dare blame me for this. I didn't walk out on our marriage, Amanda. I didn't go sneaking around behind your back. I was lonely, Adam, she cried, the words bursting out of her. I didn't feel like you saw me anymore. Like I didn't matter to you. Adam stared at her, his jaw tight, his fists shaking at his sides. I didn't see you. I didn't see you. He stepped closer, his voice a low growl. I saw you every damn day, Amanda. I've spent the last 8 years building a life for us. For you. And the whole time, you were out there, laughing with him. She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking as sobs racked her body. I'm sorry, Adam, she choked out. I'm so sorry. He watched her cry, but he felt nothing, no pity, no sympathy, just a cold emptiness where his heart used to be. Finally, he turned away, running a hand roughly through his hair. I can't even look at you right now. Adam, please. Don't. He cut her off, his voice breaking. Don't say another word. Amanda stood frozen, her tears falling silently now as she stared at him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the distant rumble of thunder and the faint patter of rain against the windows. Finally, Adam turned back to her, his expression hard. You can sleep in the guest room tonight. Adam. I said don't. She opened her mouth as if to say something else, but no words came. With her shoulders slumped in defeat, she picked up her purse and moved toward the hallway. Adam waited until he heard the soft click of the guest room door closing before he sank onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. His phone buzzed again from the drawer where he'd stashed it, but he ignored it. He didn't want to see the fallout of what he'd sent earlier, didn't want to think about what was coming next. All he knew was that everything, had changed, and there was no going back. The storm outside raged on as Adam sat alone in the dark, the weight of his shattered marriage pressing down on him like a boulder. The sound of Adam's footsteps echoed through the quiet house the next morning, as though he were walking through an empty museum. He stood in the kitchen, staring blankly at the untouched coffee pot, unable to summon the energy to start it. The storm outside had passed, leaving behind a gray, heavy stillness that matched the atmosphere inside the house. Upstairs, the faint creak of a door made him tense. Amanda had been silent all night in the guest room, but now the sound of her steps, the hesitant shuffle of someone trying not to wake a beast, was unmistakable. Adam remained rooted in place, his jaw tight, waiting for the inevitable. When Amanda entered the kitchen, her eyes were bloodshot, her face pale, and her hair tangled in a way that betrayed her sleepless night. She didn't speak at first. The silence hung between them like a thick curtain, suffocating, unbearable. But when she finally opened her mouth, the quiet shattered. "How could you do this?" Her voice was raw, trembling, yet edged with rage. "How could you send that picture to everyone we know?" Adam turned slowly, meeting her glare with an unreadable expression. "They deserve to know the truth. You made this mess. Not me." Her breath caught in her throat. "You think you're some hero? Some martyr?" She took a step toward him, shaking with anger. "You ruined me, Adam. Ruined me. Do you know what I woke up to this morning?" "I don't care," Adam replied coldly. "You should care." Amanda's voice cracked, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. "My friends, people I've known since college, are calling me a liar, a cheater, a homewrecker. Messages, phone calls, dozens of them, all night long. Do you know what people are saying to me? What they're saying about us?" Adam stayed silent. Part of him wanted to feel guilt, but all he could summon was an icy satisfaction. He thought of Amanda laughing with that other man, so effortlessly, so easily. He thought of those 6 months she'd spent building a life he had no part in, and it hardened him. Amanda's voice dropped, trembling with disbelief. "Even my father called me." "My father, Adam. You know what he said?" When Adam didn't respond, she pushed on, her tone growing more frantic, more desperate. "He said I'm a disgrace. That I've embarrassed him, embarrassed the family. Do you know what it's like to hear your own father say that he's ashamed of you?" Adam's jaw clenched, his fists curling at his sides. "I'm not the one who embarrassed the family, Amanda. You did that all on your own." Her eyes flared, and before she could stop herself, she grabbed the nearest coffee mug from the counter and hurled it at him. It missed, shattering against the wall behind him in a spray of ceramic shards. "Damn you, Adam," she screamed, her voice cracking with anguish. "You did this. You're punishing me, fine, but did you think about anyone else? Did you think about the kids?" Adam froze. "What do you mean, the kids?" Amanda's shoulders heaved as she wiped at the tears streaking down her face. "They know. Or at least they've heard about it. Do you have any idea how fast something like this spreads?" The words hit him like a fist to the chest. "What are you talking about?" "Parents talk, Adam. Kids overhear things. You sent that picture to everyone, including the parents of our son's friends. I got a call from the school this morning because someone teased Ethan, teased our son, about his mother cheating on his father." Adam's face paled. He staggered back a step as though she'd physically struck him. "They don't understand," Amanda continued, her voice quieter now, though still trembling with rage. "They're just kids, Adam. But now our children, are going to be dragged into this mess. Do you even realize what you've done?" Adam turned away, unable to look at her. Ethan. His name echoed in Adam's mind, followed by the image of his son's wide, curious eyes. 8 years old and sensitive, just like Adam had been at that age. The thought of Ethan hearing whispers about his mother and father, about words he wouldn't fully understand, cheating, homewrecker, made Adam's stomach churn. For a brief moment, regret clawed at the edges of his resolve. He'd been so focused on Amanda, so consumed by his own anger and betrayal, that he hadn't thought about the consequences. He hadn't thought about them. "I didn't mean. You didn't mean to." Amanda's laugh was hollow, bitter. What did you think would happen, Adam? Did you think people would just take your side and move on? That there wouldn't be collateral damage? Adam's face remained impassive, but the words hit home. He swallowed hard, struggling to find his voice. I wanted you to see what you'd done. Well, congratulations, Amanda said bitterly. I see it. I see it all. My friends have cut me off, my father won't speak to me, and now my children will have to suffer because you wanted to play judge, jury, and executioner. They deserve to know the truth, Adam repeated, though the words sounded less certain this time. Amanda stepped closer, her voice lower but no less furious. What truth, Adam? That I made a mistake. That I failed you. You think what I did was wrong, and you're right. It was. But what you did, what you just did, was so much worse. The weight of her words pressed down on him like a stone. His chest felt tight, suffocating. The anger that had carried him through the night was fading, replaced by something colder. He hadn't planned for this. At that moment, the sound of the front door slamming made them both jump. Amanda. The deep, booming voice of Amanda's father echoed through the house like a warning shot. Adam turned to see the man barreling into the kitchen, his face red with fury. Robert Westfield was tall and broad-shouldered, a retired Marine whose presence could fill a room even without the glare he wore now. Amanda stepped back instinctively as her father stormed in. Dad, please. You. Robert's fingers shot out, jabbing toward Adam like a weapon. His voice was low and dangerous, trembling with barely contained rage. What the hell is wrong with you? Adam stood his ground, though his pulse quickened. Robert. Don't you, Robert, me, he roared. Sending pictures like that? Broadcasting your dirty laundry to the entire town like some petty child? She cheated on me, Adam snapped, his voice rising. For 6 months. What was I supposed to do? Pretend it didn't happen. You handle it like a man. Robert shouted, stepping closer, his face inches from Adam's. You don't drag her name through the mud for everyone to see. You don't destroy your family over your bruised pride. She destroyed this family, Adam shot back. Robert's voice dropped, cold and lethal. No. You just finished the job. The words hit Adam like a gut punch. He staggered back a step, his mouth opening as if to respond, but no sound came out. Amanda looked between the two men, her face crumpling. Dad, please. Stop. Robert turned sharply toward her. And you. I raised you better than this. Amanda's eyes filled with fresh tears as she dropped her gaze to the floor. The house fell silent again, the three of them standing there like strangers, the weight of their shattered lives pressing down on all of them. Finally, Robert shook his head in disgust. I'm taking the kids to my house for a few days. Both of you need to get your act together before you drag them any further into this mess. Amanda didn't argue. She just nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks as her father turned and walked toward the stairs to gather the children. Adam sank into a chair at the kitchen table, his hands trembling as he stared down at the broken coffee mug on the floor. For the first time since it all began, he felt the full weight of what he'd done, what they'd both done. The house around him seemed to collapse inward, the silence deafening, as the consequences of his anger came into sharp, painful focus. Adam sat at the kitchen table long after Robert had stormed upstairs, long after the heavy footfalls of his father-in-law signaled he'd left the house with the kids. The front door had slammed shut behind them, a sound that echoed through the empty home like a final sentence being passed. Now, the silence felt like an unbearable weight. Amanda had retreated into the guest room again, the door closed tight, as though it could shut out the world they'd both managed to destroy. Adam sat in the stillness, staring at the empty coffee mug in his hands. He didn't remember making it, didn't remember sitting down, but there he was, sleepless, hollowed out, and alone. He thought about Ethan, their 8-year-old son, bright and thoughtful, too much like his father. He imagined the look on his face when he'd heard those cruel, whispered words from some classmate whose parents had gotten Adam's message. Your mom cheated on your dad. The thought made Adam's stomach turn. In his mind, the image of Ethan's soft voice broke through, asking questions Adam wasn't ready to answer. Why is everyone saying that about Mom? Is it true? Did you fight? Adam pinched the bridge of his nose, his breath shaky. He hadn't meant to hurt his son. He hadn't thought about how far-reaching the consequences would be when he hit send. He'd wanted justice. Clarity. He'd wanted Amanda to feel even a sliver of the betrayal he'd felt when he saw her in that restaurant, her face lit up with someone else's laughter. But now the truth sat there like a dead weight, leaving a hollow victory in its wake. The quiet broke when Amanda's voice came from the hallway. It wasn't soft this time, no longer begging, no longer pleading. You need to fix this. Adam looked up, startled, as Amanda stood there, her tear-streaked face twisted with anger. She hadn't even bothered to brush her hair or wipe the smudges of mascara from under her eyes. It made her look raw, broken, someone he barely recognized. Fix this. Adam repeated, his voice low and hoarse. How, exactly, do you suggest I fix it, Amanda? You think I have the answers? Her voice cracked, rising in pitch as she stepped closer. You're the one who lit the match, Adam. You sent that picture. You blasted my mistakes to everyone we know. Everyone. Adam set the mug down with a dull thud, his patience thin. Your mistakes are why we're here in the first place. Don't forget that. Amanda's lip trembled as she clenched her fists at her sides. I know what I did. I know I screwed up. But what you did, what you just did, it's cruel. You destroyed me, Adam. My friends won't even talk to me. My own father said he's ashamed of me. Her voice shook now, more pleading than enraged. I've already lost everything, everything. Was that what you wanted? Adam pushed back his chair, the sound scraping loudly against the floor. I wanted you to see what you've done, he said sharply, though his voice betrayed something softer beneath the surface. I wanted everyone to know who you are. The real you. Amanda let out a bitter laugh, though tears continued to slip down her cheeks. Oh, they know who I am now, Adam. Don't worry about that. And they know who you are too. The man who dragged his wife's shame out for the world to see. Who made sure his own children would hear about it before they even understood what it meant. The words hit their mark. Adam looked away, his throat tight. He wanted to snap back, to throw her betrayal in her face one more time, but the image of Ethan's confused face rose unbidden in his mind again, silencing him. Amanda took a shaky breath, brushing a strand of hair out of her face. You didn't think this through, did you? You were angry, hurt, and I get it, Adam, I do, but this isn't just about us anymore. It's about the kids. It's about the fact that I can't even take them to school without wondering if someone's whispering about me, about them. Adam's voice dropped, cold and even. You should have thought about them before you started sneaking around. Amanda flinched, her breath catching. For a moment, she seemed like she might collapse under the weight of his words, but she steadied herself. You're right, she whispered, almost to herself. I should have thought about them. I should have thought about a lot of things. But you just made this so much worse. Before Adam could respond, Amanda turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving him alone once again. He heard her retreat into the guest room, the door clicking shut. Adam stared at the empty doorway, her words circling through his mind like vultures. Hours later, the knock on the door shattered Adam's fragile calm. He frowned as he stood, glancing at the clock. Almost noon. Amanda hadn't come out of the guest room again, and the house was quiet save for the ticking of the clock on the wall. When he opened the door, Robert was standing there, his face carved in stone, a hard, unflinching expression Adam had come to expect from his father-in-law. But this time, there was something else in his eyes, contempt. The kids weren't with him. Where are Ethan and Maddie? Adam asked, his voice careful, almost guarded. Robert's lips pressed into a thin line. They're staying with me until you two figure this out. You can't just. I can and I will, Robert snapped, stepping inside without being invited. He loomed over Adam, his broad frame taking up too much space in the entryway. They're my grandchildren. And I won't let them get caught in the middle of this circus you two created. Adam took a step back, squaring his shoulders. They're my children. You don't get to decide what's best for them. Neither of you are what's best for them right now. Robert's tone dropped, cold and biting. You sent that picture, Adam. You started this war. Did you even stop to think what it would do to them? Or were you too busy trying to hurt Amanda? Adam bristled, his chest tightening. She's the one who did this. She cheated on me, not the other way around. Robert scoffed, his voice low and venomous. I don't care if she burned the damn house down. You still don't humiliate the mother of your children like that. What kind of man does that? Adam's jaw clenched, his hands curling into fists at his sides. I was angry. Well, congratulations. Robert's eyes narrowed. You've made your point. And in the process, you've embarrassed this entire family. My daughter is a mess. My grandkids are confused and hurting. And you, he jabbed a finger at Adam's chest. You're just sitting here, playing the victim. Adam's face hardened. I'm not playing the victim. Then act like it. Robert turned sharply, his coat flaring out behind him as he stalked toward the door. Fix this, Adam. Or you'll lose a hell of a lot more than just your wife. The door slammed behind him, leaving Adam in the heavy silence once more. He stood there, the words still ringing in his ears. You'll lose a hell of a lot more. Adam rubbed his face with both hands, his chest heaving. The anger that had once burned so brightly inside him now felt like ash. He'd been right, Amanda had betrayed him. She'd shattered their marriage and lied to his face for months. But in his rage, he'd broken something else entirely. Something he wasn't sure he could put back together. Adam's hands hovered over the shattered laptop, Amanda's note, "Two can play this game," still fresh in his mind. The words had a weight to them, a threat that hung in the air like an unspoken promise. He stood frozen in the dim office, the broken screen flickering faintly before giving up altogether, as if mocking his desperation. Outside, the faint sound of Amanda's car disappeared into the distance. The house felt emptier than ever, a hollow, lifeless shell. The silence, so suffocating before, now seemed to hiss and whisper in every corner, "What have you done?" Adam sank into the office chair, his chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. The past 24 hours unraveled before him like a film reel he couldn't stop watching, Amanda's laughter at the restaurant, the table flipping over, the picture he'd sent, the look on Ethan's face when Robert took him away. He had wanted justice, hadn't he? Revenge? He had wanted her to feel every ounce of humiliation and betrayal he had. But now, as the house sat empty, the echo of Amanda's parting words gnawed at him, "You're not the saint you think you are." Adam rubbed his hands over his face, trying to block it all out. His phone sat silent on the desk where he'd tossed it earlier. For the first time since sending that message, he was terrified of what it might hold. Finally, he picked it up. The screen lit up. 23 missed calls. 46 unread messages. Amanda. Robert. Friends. Work. The list stretched endlessly. Hesitating for only a moment, he opened the first message. It was from Robert. "You better get your act together, Adam. Amanda told me everything. You're not the victim you're pretending to be." The second message was worse. From an unknown number. "Guess you're not so perfect after all, huh? Thought you should know we all heard about your business trips." What a joke. Adam's stomach turned. He flipped through message after message, each one cutting deeper than the last. "Does Amanda know about your little secrets, Adam? You played the victim card, but you're just as dirty. Good luck explaining this one to your kids." His pulse quickened, his mind spinning. He could barely breathe as he opened his email inbox. Amanda had been busy, he could see that now. An email thread, titled "Truth About Adam Blake," sat near the top of his inbox, forwarded dozens of times. With shaking hands, he opened it. Attached was a series of scanned documents, emails, financial statements, travel receipts. The first email was from him to a woman named Emily. It was dated nearly a year ago. "Seattle was incredible. Can't stop thinking about last night. When can I see you again?" Adam stared at it, his breath hitching. His own words, staring back at him like a ghost from another life. His secret life. Amanda hadn't been bluffing, she'd found it. The next document was a hotel bill. His name. A room booked for two. No, he whispered to himself, gripping the phone tighter. Amanda's betrayal had felt so absolute, so unforgivable. But now, staring at these documents, his anger started to turn inward. He remembered Emily, the coworker who had filled the lonely hours on his work trips, who had been a one-time mistake that turned into two, then three. He had justified it to himself back then. Amanda had been distant, disconnected, and he'd been lost. Weak. He'd told himself it didn't count. That it didn't mean anything. But it did. It all did. Adam leaned back in the chair, staring up at the ceiling, his vision blurring. For so long, he'd clung to his anger as though it would save him, as though Amanda's sins could erase his own. But here it was, his hypocrisy, laid bare. Hours passed in a haze. He sat in the office, unmoving, replaying it all. The doorbell finally broke the silence, sharp and sudden. Adam jolted upright, his stiff body protesting as he stood. For a moment, he considered ignoring it, but something compelled him to move. When he opened the door, Amanda stood there. Her face was blotchy from crying, but her posture was stiff, resolute. Rain dotted her hair and coat, but she didn't seem to care. Adam stared at her, his voice hoarse. "You came back. I didn't come back for you." Her voice was calm, emotionless. "I came back for the truth." Amanda stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, shaking the rain from her coat. Adam closed the door behind her, unsure of what to say or do. "You sent that picture to destroy me," Amanda said, turning to face him. "And maybe I deserved it. I cheated on you, Adam. I betrayed you, and I won't pretend otherwise. But you're no better than me." Adam opened his mouth to argue, but nothing came out. She looked him seriously in the eye. "What you did with Emily, did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you think you were so much smarter than me? So much better?" "I'm sorry," Adam said softly, the word surprising even himself. Amanda blinked. For a moment, it seemed like the fight left her. She dropped her gaze, exhaling shakily. "Do you even realize what you've done to us? To our family? I don't even know where to start picking up the pieces." "I didn't want this," Adam said, his voice thick. "I didn't mean to." "None of us meant to," Amanda cut him off, her voice weary. "But here we are." Silence filled the space between them. Finally, Amanda looked up, and for the first time in days, there was no anger on her face, only exhaustion. "I talked to Robert. He's keeping the kids for the rest of the week." Her voice was quiet, steady. "I need time, Adam. And you do too. For now, I think we're done." Adam swallowed hard. "Done?" "Yes." Amanda turned toward the door, pausing to look at him one last time. "You wanted revenge. You got it. I hope it was worth it." Adam didn't move as she walked out the door, closing it quietly behind her. The house felt colder than before, emptier somehow, though nothing had changed. Adam stood there for a long moment, listening to the faint sound of Amanda's car pulling away. The rain started again, tapping softly against the windows, as if the storm had been waiting for her to leave. He sank back into the couch, his head in his hands. There was nothing left, no words, no justifications, no anger to carry him forward. Amanda had walked away with the truth, and that truth had brought them both to ruin. For the first time, Adam let the weight of it all crash over him. The love they'd destroyed. The family they'd broken. The trust they'd shattered beyond repair. And now, there was nothing but silence. The storm outside raged on. What do you think? Did Adam go too far, or was Amanda's betrayal unforgivable? Share your thoughts below and let's discuss.